Hello and welcome. I'm Peter Greathouse, a licensed realtor with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Select Properties here in the St. Louis area. Today I have Joe Doctor with me from the Chad Bora team of Pillar to Post, here to do an inspection on this great house. Joe, what are you looking for?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's pretty broad. We're looking at everything from the top down. Everything on the exterior, main floor, basement. There's really nothing we're not going to put our eyes on. All right, so as we kind of come around the house, we're gonna be looking at a lot of this vinyl siding right here. This is vinyl, it's real squishy, really one of the most durable surfaces in my opinion. A little bit susceptible to impact, like baseballs or things like that going against it, but it's honestly one of my favorite sidings I can see on here. Soffit and fascia is this part that jets out at the top of the house. So the fascia bore is the one that the gutter is attached to. The soffit is underneath, it has these little vents inside of it. So when referencing soffit or fascia, you now have an understanding of exactly what that we were referencing there. And then attached right on top of the fascia again is that gutter with our downspout that is exiting water on top of the yard. We would love to see it to be buried and take further away from the house, but in this situation where you have grade going downhill, it's perfectly acceptable. And as we walk around the house, we're going to see other things that are sticking out. You guys can clearly see the difference in colors here. Dryer vents, for example, here. And you have another vent looks a little different over in this corner, which is attached to the microwave vent. So that's the hood, essentially, in the kitchen. And then if you ever see white pipe coming out of a house above the concrete foundation, usually where the siding is on the house, it comes down to the ground, that is normally connected to your sump pump, which is going to be located in the basement. So you'll see that here shortly. And of course, all of our hose bibs. So this, we check them for operation. This would be an anti-freeze hose bib. Whenever you see this guy here on the top, or this little run looks almost like a soda cap on the top of a hose bib, that's indication it's anti-freeze, meaning you don't have to shut the water off in the interior in the wintertime, so it will not freeze in the wintertime. So here we are in the back of the house. Again, all siding exposed. Obviously you can see we're missing what would normally be a deck here at the top. Perfectly acceptable though because of the fencing that was installed, but this house was designed to have a deck floating over the backyard right in here. And then we're gonna come and look at the patio. It's really important to look at the patios on the house because they always go up against the foundation, okay? We wanna make sure that is appropriately sloped away from the house. So we're gonna be making sure that nothing is tilted back or water could potentially enter the home from that, from a negative slope going back into the house. And then we have great slope in the backyard, meaning all the rainwater we see or potentially could come down around this backyard is gonna go straight downhill. So that's exactly what we wanna see. Something else we'll also be considering is when we're looking at receptacles, we're looking on the outside. So when we're on the outside, we're checking this to make sure it is got wired correctly, which it is. So these two lights here on the right side are indication that it's correctly wired. And these need to be GFCI protected. So we would hit this button on top, which would kill the power here, essentially tripping a GFCI circuit, but does need to be in place on any exterior rated receptacle. Occasionally when you come across a house, you're gonna see on the exterior a blank box that says pest shield. Often we're gonna see it where it's pretty faded, you almost can't see it. It says, please do not tamper with this port box. What this really is, and you can see no one has, they put a little lock on it. There's a system that was installed in this house, basically piping that runs around the perimeter, and this company, Pest Shield, can come out and service this home for bug repellent. So they literally come in here, open this port up, and they will plug a hose into it, and they can chemically treat the whole house without ever accessing the interior of the house at all. So on the exterior of the house, you're gonna often see a lot of things going on, if you will. You ever seen something that looks like this? This is your gas main. So this is where the gas company pipes all the gas to. It's gonna come up from the ground here, go through the meter. This is where they decide how much you use and then funnel it into the house, which is then dispersed to all your gas appliances inside the house. The main shutoff for your gas is almost always gonna be on this exterior unit, and you can see right here, it's located here at the very, very bottom. So that is the gas main shutoff there in the back of this unit. It is not hand turnable. You have to use a wrench to do it. If it's hand turnable, anybody could come in and turn your gas off at any time. So you will need a wrench to turn this guy off. And then over here we have our electrical main. As you can see, it is conduited in and runs underground. So we can't see the wires, we can't visually see the wires, and we don't want to. The only part you can visually see is right here. It's in perfect condition. The thickness of this wiring typically tells us it's a 200 amp service. And an easy way for you guys to determine the size of the service coming in by this wire is, if you put your 2 index fingers together, it's about the width of the main coming in, and if you put your 2 pinkies together, that's a 200. I'm sorry, this would be a 100 amp. 200 amp service, 100 amp service. So just by the thickness of your fingers, you can typically just tell on those. On the exterior of the house, we're gonna have air conditioner units. You're normally gonna find these sitting on the ground, but in this situation, which is my preference, it's actually hooked onto the foundation. So there's this bracket here in place, which hooks it onto the foundation. What this is doing is help keeping this level, perfectly level, because if it is on the ground, it would be sloped, or if it was on a pad, it could settle over time. So we're gonna make sure this is operating properly. We're gonna be checking all the coils on the outside here to make sure they're free and clear of debris. And then of course, we do a little further in-depth checking once we get inside on the A coil right above the furnace. If you ever come on the outside of the house and you see a white cap or white pipe on the ground, that is called a sewer lateral cleanout. Its only purpose is really to cable lines if they need cabling. In the situation of this house, everything is PVC. It should never need to be cabled, but this is for inspection. So it's access for an inspector to open a cap, put a camera down to the sewers, look at all the piping under the house, and look at all the piping back out to the sewer lateral to make sure it's in functioning condition. So as we come into this house, you can see we do have a front porch here, and it is covered. So we have access here if we can come out of the rain. There are a lot of homes in the St. Louis area that actually have no covered front porches, which can lead to moisture entry or damage to the framing and doors of the house. So it's really, really nice to have some additional coverage here on the front porch to prolong the life of the door and all the framing material. So here on the inside of a garage, there is quite a bit of drywall in here, and then there's a lot of area where you don't see any drywall, it's just framing. That is an indication that this is exposed to the exterior of the home, where the drywall portions are exposed to the interior of the home. So it is insulated, and this is acting as a fire barrier as well. So inside the house, the front porch area will be sitting right here on the other side of this wall. That's on the exterior, so it does not need to be insulated or finished. On a garage, we're gonna check for operation. So we will make sure it goes up and down appropriately, but we're also looking for the spring. On this type of spring right here, we're making sure there's no cracks or breaks on it. So it's very, very common that these will break, and you won't know because these aluminum doors are very, very, very light, and the garage door opener can open them without the spring being engaged at all in a lot of situations. Occasionally on a basement floor, we're gonna see a crack. And what I mean by occasionally, I mean every single time. So in a house this new, this cracking is by design. It's a zip strip they put in there. It's a plastic, almost looks like fishing line that is buried here in the concrete that gives it more of a straight crack, but they want to settle how they want it to settle. So it's designed to settle or crack this way, but rarely is a crack in the basement floor ever a structural concern. So this chipping that we can see right here with my light, you can see where this floor is chipped up, or there's a crack along here. That's where the actual floor is meeting the footing of the house. These are 2 different concrete pours, and that cracking is perfectly acceptable and normal, and no need of repair. When you come into a basement of a home that's got a rough-in bathroom, this is an indication of what that would be when you have these pipes sticking out of the ground. This large 4-inch pipe, this is designed for the toilet, or where the toilet would be installed, and then this pipe right here says, hey, I'm for the sink. So you can install the sink either on this side of the toilet or this side of the toilet, depends upon how you configure your bathroom entirely. And this third 2-inch pipe right here is where you'd put the shower or a bathroom. When you have a metal support beam kind of spanning over a house, it's gotta be supported on the exterior wall. It's not gonna sit on top of the foundation wall. So they actually have it poured where there is a void essentially in the foundation right here. And that is to accept this metal beam. And this is called the beam pocket. These can crack a little bit in the corners, which is considered totally normal and expected. In this situation, we have very, very little cracking, which tells me this home hasn't done very much settling in the few years it's been here. Commonly, we'll see a lot of staining coming over the top of a foundation wall and drizzling down. In this house, we have the slope going sharply towards the back of the house, meaning the dirt line is probably somewhere in this area, but we have staining up here, which a lot of people assume is moisture. This is where contractors were scraping mud off their boots during construction, and the dirt stain just kind of drizzled down the concrete wall, and it's never been power washed off. Here we have our sump pit, and then inside is our sump pump. That pipe we talked about on the outside, this is that, guys. You can see it goes all the way up to the top of the foundation and it exits the home. The reason it exits above the foundation is they don't want to drill a hole through 8 to 12 inches of concrete to have this eject out into the yard. So they go up in what's called the band board and they fire the pipe right out in the exterior. Down here though is our sump pump. In this situation, it doesn't look like this sump pit is taking on very much water. And there's a float on the inside of this pump that we can check to make sure it is fully functional and operational. So the sump pump is very similar to a float you might see in the back of a toilet. This guy right here, as it's lifted, can kick on, as you can hear it, and kick back off as it drops down. So that essentially is a buoy that is it will rise with the water. Once it gets high enough, it kicks on, pumps all the water out, and is ready to take on some more. So here inside the electrical panel, again, that wire that was 2 index fingers wide is coming in here in the top of the panel. And that is actually powering up what we call our bus bar. So these 2 posts that come down, that is what is powering up the actual grid for the electrical system. And these guys are plugged into this grid, which then distributes power throughout the house. When we're in here, we're gonna be making sure only 1 wire goes into every single breaker. That's called 1 circuit. You can't have multiple wires going into a breaker because then you could potentially be overloading that circuit. Obviously, attention to detail, newer construction, the electrician cared about his work. This is a super clean panel. It is in excellent condition. What we have here, guys, is our water main coming into the house. So we have a shut-off valve right here to cut the water to the entire house, and our pressure regulating valve. This is designed to reduce pressure if it is too high, and in this situation it probably is because it's installed and a plumber installed it to reduce the pressure of the fixtures so you won't have leaky faucets. This wire right here though is called the ground wire. This ground wire is actually attached over to and comes in the top of this panel over behind these white wires right there. So that is the actual grounding system for the electrical panel, which is attached to this wire. What makes that kind of cool and important is if there's ever a surge and something is it's grounded, it's literally because this pipe goes into the ground, takes that power and disperses that energy into the soil or dirt on the exterior. So as we had that water main coming in that is copper, it immediately transfers over to PEX Piping. PEX Piping is a newer product in our area, but newer, I mean 20 years old. It is a fantastic product, a lot less joints or connections within that product, and it expands when freezes. So it is an excellent pipe, very, very, very efficient, and the preferred method today. Sometimes you will see a valve right here located on a pipe that looks like it's going outside. That is going to be connected to your hose bib on the exterior. So in the winter time, you can shut the water off if you want to on the exterior of this house, but with the type of valves that are installed, it's not necessary. Here is the furnace for the house. This is a mid-efficiency gas furnace. And the reason we can tell it's mid-efficiency is because it's got this galvanized vent piping and not PVC piping on the exterior of the unit. We are going to be checking to make sure that this is proper, working just fine by kicking it on, checking the flames within the burner compartment there on the inside. As long as what we're looking for is a really blue colored flame, that's an indication it's burning very cleanly. But we would always recommend a gas mechanical inspection so they can actually check the entire furnace along with the capacitors on the inside as well. So here we have our water heater coming into the house. It's your pretty standard 50-gallon water heater. It is a gas system as well, which you can tell again by the galvanized piping on the top. We're just making sure the guy's operational, which this one currently is. Then we're checking all the components to make sure that there is no leaking or evidence of leaking going on within the water heater itself. So in this situation, this guy's super clean, looks awesome. So on the water heater, this is called an expansion tank. An expansion tank is designed to relieve some pressure inside this tank. When you figure you have hot water building up inside there, there's steam, and that pressure needs somewhere to potentially go without engaging the actual temperature and pressure relief valve. So that's one of the functions for a expansion tank. But this number right here, 65 PSI, is the pressure of the water coming into the house, 65 pounds per square inch. That tank is pumped up to exactly 65 pounds per square inch of pressure so that if it gets higher than that, it can absorb that water back into this tank. So we got our vinyl windows here that we're inspecting. These vinyl windows are great windows. And if there ever is a problem with the glass, you can remove the glass without replacing the window. But once you check them for operation, you can see this guy's moving on, open and closing really well. And then we check the tilt clips. Make sure that they tilt in properly and that on these bottom corners, this is actually where we would have the cord balancers attached to the window. That's what holds the windows up. So those are in perfect shape. Close this guy right back up. Works perfectly. So we're going to make sure the hot is the hot side and the cold is the cold side in the shower. That is important, especially for younger children. When they are taking a shower and they're getting hot or cold, they're going to go the direction it's supposed to go. So if those pipes are reversed, it can cause burning. Also, this is a plastic surround, or what we would consider a composite surround shower. These are actually really nice because they don't penetrate any water. There's really not much area for leaking except the actual seams. So in this style, they don't need to be caulked. The seams are actually interwoven together, and there's a little seam on the bottom where if any water gets behind there, it drains into the basin. So we're doing these bathrooms, we're going to be checking for proper function of the water coming out of the house. We've got plenty of pressure. We're going to check both hot and cold. Okay, we want to fill this guy up though too, because the most water that can go through this drain at any given time is when you fill the sink up and then dump the water back down. When we're underneath though, we're going to be looking for leaks in all the plumbing fixtures. We're going to drop this water down and we're going to be feeling these connections for leaks, making sure we have nothing going on there. We all feel really dry. And you can also kind of take a peek under the sink as well. There's no staining, no evidence there's been really any problems with previous leakages. So in the bathrooms, we have to have what's called GFCI receptacles, or ground fault circuit interrupted receptacles, which is what these are. So when I plug this guy in, come over here, you can see it's lit up and wired properly. When I push this button on the top, it's supposed to kill power immediately, and it did. So in that master bathroom, when there was a normal receptacle, we wanted to see it was GFCI protected, which is what this outlet is, and it is, because when I pushed my button on the top, it killed this receptacle. So you can see there's nothing lit up, because this is the one that tripped, which is perfectly acceptable. Come in here, reset it, it's all set up and ready to go. You can have up to 9 outlets on one GFCI receptacle. Dishwashers are often not installed properly. So there are brackets on the top that are screwed into either a countertop or to the adjacent cabinetry. In this situation, they are screwed into the countertop at the top, but you want that in there because you don't want this guy moving around when you open the door and you get all that weight coming out here with the dishwasher. You want it to stay right there in place. So this guy's perfectly installed. So we will come in and check operation of all the appliances. One of the things that we do check for safety is called an anti-tip device. An anti-tip device does not allow a stove to tip forward. So there's a little bracket on the floor that is connected to the stove, which does not allow it to tip over, because as these doors are open, they can become a step for young children. But also these ovens are very, very, very front heavy because of the glass in the window. So these tipping over or being front heavy are very, very common. That's why it needs that tip device. So when we are checking ceiling fans, we really want to check them on high. So we're going to kick this guy on. The reason on high is that gives us the most centrifugal force, and so it may wobble. If it wobbles too much, it could come loose from the ceiling and come down. Although really, really, really unlikely, that is certainly the concern. This guy here is now up to speed and just a tiny bit of movement, which we consider very typical. Here we have the thermostat for the house. In this situation, it's a desk thermostat, which basically means you can control it from your phone from anywhere in the world. These guys are great. They're very, very, very intuitive. They can learn how you like to live, when you like it hot, when you like it cold. You can pick modes. You can certainly turn anything on that you want. Boom, this guy's back on. So that's your Nest thermostat. They make a variety of versions similar to a Nest. They're all outstanding. If you ever see a large vent in a wall, typically higher up on a wall, it's an indication it's a return air vent. Return air vents are for the furnace and air conditioning, or the HVAC system. Air is being sucked into this vent and pulled down to the basement where the furnace is located. It is either heated in the furnace or cooled in the A-coil down there and redistributed throughout our floor registers in the house. So the floor vent we see right here is the other end from that return air vent we talked about earlier. This is what we call forced air. This is where air is actually blown throughout the house to either heat it or cool it. In newer homes, probably within the last 20 years, smoke detectors are typically what they call hardwired. Hardwired means they run on electricity, but they also still require that battery as the backup. When one goes off, the rest of the entire house goes off at the same time. So it gets really noisy really quick, but is a huge improvement from the battery operated ones where nobody ever changed the batteries. Our premium home inspections, we use the infrared camera. This is by far my favorite tool, and I can show you a real quick example of how this works. So all this is doing is reflecting back to me temperature. And as they get over this floor vent, you're going to be able to see right there that that's a lot colder air coming out of there. That's why it's blue. Something that's also really neat is I can look at this wall. Come on over here, guys. And when you see this wall and there's nothing on it, looks pretty plain Jane, I'm going to stick my hand on it for a second, but as I remove my handprint's going to stay there. It can pick up those tenths of a degree difference in temperature, which can help us find potential leaks or electrical issues within the wall.